Let us rejoice in it and be glad. For is it beyond thee to be glad with the gladness of this rhythm, to be tossed and lost and broken in the whirl of this fearful joy? All things rush on, they stop not, they look not behind, no power can hold them back, they rush on. Keeping step with that restless, rapid music, seasons come dancing and pass away. Colors, tunes, and perfumes pour in endless cascades in the abounding joy that scatters and gives up and dies every moment. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome on this very special Music Sunday, as we are called to worship with these inspiring words from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore. I welcome you to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, a community where love works. It sure does, though we have to work at it. Our mission is to explore the eternal, nurture community, and build a more just world. Together, we dare to rehearse and practice Dr. King's vision of the beloved community, both within and around. Please know that whoever you are, wherever you're from, whomever you love, wherever you're on life's journey, whatever your gender identity, beliefs, economic circumstance, political affiliation, or immigration status, you are welcome here. Good
Amen.
morning, Katie.
Good morning, Reverend Abhi.
Our lay pastoral visitors work closely with the ministers to support the pastoral ministry of this congregation. If you have a pastoral need or concern today, Betsy Binks will be at the Joys and Sorrows table for a few minutes after the service. I'd like to draw your attention to the insert in your order of celebration. This is a vital and engaged religious community. Please review the insert and see how you might become more deeply engaged in the work of this congregation. I'd like to extend a special welcome to those joining our service online, whether in the moment or catching up with us later. We are glad to have you with us.
And if you're new to Cedar Lane, we have a small gift for you. If you feel comfortable doing so, please rise or raise your hand so that we may recognize and welcome you to worship this morning. Wonderful. We have some guests here this morning. Let's give them a warm Cedar Lane welcome. Thank you for choosing to worship with us this morning. All are invited to stay after the service to enjoy coffee, tea, and hot chocolate and conversations. Our guests, please know that if you choose to pick up a yellow mug, our members and friends will know that they need to come and say hello to you. Because at Cedar Lane, yellow means
hello.
Indeed. And today, we share our offering with Housing Unlimited, a nonprofit organization that provides affordable, independent housing for adults in mental health recovery in Montgomery County. Cedar Lane has been a long-standing supporter of this organization, in large part thanks to the efforts of our beloved member, Kay Scott. And it is a worthy organization that needs our support. And to help us understand that a little bit more, I'd like to welcome a resident of Housing Unlimited, Lawrence Warren, who's here with us to share a brief testimonial. Welcome, Warren.
Hello, everyone. My name is Lars Warner. I'm a resident at the HUI Housing Unlimited program, mental health, that I struggled with all my life. And it seemed like I could not do everyday things and become a productive citizen of Montgomery County or any county due to my mental health. And I fell victim to alcohol and drugs and thought that that was the way. And it took 2014 had got arrested, and the judge told the lawyer to get me evaluation and to get me in the program to keep me on my medications. And that way I wouldn't be homeless, because being on medication, the right medication, you can pretty much do normal things like you all do. But when you self-medicate yourself, you can't do nothing but fall victim to whatever negative it is. And I've been with HUI now going on 3.5 years, and there's nothing that I can't achieve as long as I take my medication, listen to the counselors, and do the next right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Lawrence, for sharing your story with us. And friends, this is what Housing Unlimited does, provide a vital service in our county. And so your generosity today will go to support not just their ongoing work, supporting people like Lawrence, but also all those more than 300 people who are on their waiting list for whom they need affordable housing, so that they're able to not only live their own lives, but also become more self-sufficient. So thank you in advance for your generosity. And now let's just take a brief moment to greet our neighbors. inviting our mind, body, and spirit into this space made sacred by our presence and the presence of the holy, the creative interchange in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being, to connect with that restless, joyous music that supports and sustains our lives. Come, let us worship together.
Beautiful. Big joy, have mercy upon us. Deliver us from dread, from fret, funk, and glum, scowl, sneer, and fidget.
Big joy, have pity upon us. Deliver us from droop, from flinch, fuss, and squirm, sham, shame, and dither.
Big joy, shed grace upon us. Deliver us from daunt, from whine, whimper, and pout, chafe, vex, and blooper.
O big joy, rescue us from the petty, the inane, the vacuous, the mediocre, and the triumphantly stupid. Welcome.
As Robin Larkin, Lisa Todd, and Ann Chernikoff kindle the chalice, symbol of our liberal religious faith in our gathered community, please rise in body and or in spirit to read the words in your order of celebration. We light our chalice this morning as a symbol of the eternal energy and creativity that burns and moves in our universe, that brings to us and all creation change, transformation, and renewal. May we feel the heat of this eternal flame in our you are to sing hymn number 1000, Morning Has Come, in your teal hymnal.
Morning has come, Lord, rise and greet the day. Dance with joy and sing the song of gladness. The light of hope is shine upon each face. May it bring faith to guide our journey home.
Hello. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Ann Chernikoff. I'm a third-generation member of Cedar Lane. My parents, Todd and Chernikoff, are both active members, and my grandma has been singing here in the choir since 1966. So Cedar Lane has rolled out pronoun stickers. And that might raise questions for some, such as why people care so much about pronouns, and why do we need visuals for them? I wish I could say they have simple answers that everyone could agree upon right off the bat. But we are Unitarian Universalists. And in my experience, nothing is ever quite so simple. That being said, I will do my best to address these questions and explain why we as a congregation are putting our pronouns on our name tags. Overall, people care so much about pronouns because they are in many ways tied to a person's identity, specifically their gender. As a community, we are radically welcoming. Being radically welcoming means learning and growing in our awareness of gender identity and diversity. Being more comfortable with language that changes and adapts as we strive to honor diversity and openness in our community. Intentional pronoun use is one way to honor and welcome people of various identities, as well as understand and acknowledge our own identities. To truly welcome people as they are, we have to understand that people of all genders are a part of this community, and more come-seeking community. However, I'm not sure we're all on the same page about what gender means. I feel it is important to make a distinction that gender and sex are not the same. Sex is more what's in your DNA. Gender is a bit more complicated. Gender is more of a feeling. It's a messy mix of words, expectations, and your own truth. Sometimes gender and sex is a perfect match, and I would say, in fact, that is probably most people's experience with gender. My truth is a bit different. My sex is female, but my gender is non-binary. For anyone who hasn't heard of this term before, I am neither a man nor a woman. I experience gender somewhere in between. This is where we start talking about pronouns again. When people speak about me, I ask them to use they/them pronouns. To clarify several things, yes, they can be used as a singular pronoun. No, it is not grammatically incorrect, and even if it was, Somebody's identity and comfort wins out over proper English. That being said, what we all can do to become more welcoming is to put the stickers on our name tags. It is voluntary, but please consider that each time somebody in a group introduces themselves with their pronouns, I feel less alone. Let us become more of a community and put these name tags on our stickers. I hope that this has answered some questions that you might have had, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
And thank you for courageously sharing truth. And it does take a great deal of courage to speak truth to so many and to show up as our true selves every day in society. And I thank you all so much for showing support and invite you that more than applause, wearing your pronoun sticker really shows support. So please do that, and remember to, outside these walls, begin to identify yourself with pronouns so that you make it understood that everyone's pronouns are different. Thank you.
Please rise in body and/or in spirit as we sing together hymn number 95 in the gray hymnal. There is more love somewhere. Come, wanderer, come, worshiper. Come with your joys, your broken heart, your wholeness, and your loneliness. We gather as a single community in sacred space to meet the wonders and challenges that life offers us all. Let us enter this time to gather strength and inspiration as we bear witness to the joys and sorrows in our community. When I hold up my arms, I invite you to say, "We hold you in our hearts." If you are living through the small and extraordinary milestones of life, we hold you in our hearts. Come on, raise the hands. If parenting is your primary spiritual practice, we hold you in our hearts. If you live with or care for someone with grief or chronic pain, We hold you in our hearts. If you're struggling with illnesses seen and unseen, with mental illness or addictions, we hold you in our hearts. If you have suffered abuse or injustice, we hold you in our hearts. We acknowledge together the loss of Sarah Deschler's mother. Sarah, we hold you in our hearts. Our caring extends beyond Cedar Lane to others who are lost, whose lives are lost, and whose lives are impacted by violence and calamities in our world. We hold you in our hearts. May these friends of ours, our companions in the world, in all that lives unspoken in our hearts, be held in the embrace of prayer and the peace that the stillness of silence brings.
Never again will we be in this space as exactly the same people we are in this moment. This time that we have together each week, witnessing each other's lives, is truly holy. And each of us brings with us something unique each week. So as we enter into this month of creativity, let us take this time to create prayer together. In just a moment, I'm going to invite you to call out what might be on your mind or your heart into the space, and I will do my best to repeat it. So please call out loudly so I can hear you. Please speak into the space. Mother. Sarah Deschler. Feelings. Grandkids. Healing. Brother. Reconciliation. Charity. Generosity. Forgiveness. Peace. Joy. The embodiment of joy. Community. Yes. We are a multi-generational community. Yes. Confidence. So let us breathe into this multi-generational space where we have shared our voices. Let us hold the things that have been called out and are unsaid still. Peace, joy, happiness, struggle, loss, mother, Sarah Deschler. Yes. Together we bear witness to each other's lives. We come together to remember that we are not alone on this journey called life, that as a community together we have someone always to celebrate with us, always to move beside us as we experience loss, as we mourn. May we bring this sense of community, of togetherness into our week, our month, and beyond. Amen, and blessed be. And as we enter this moment of silence, holding all that we have shared, know that if you are mourning the loss of a loved one or the anniversary of a loss, you are invited to rise in body or spirit during the silence. May all hearts be restored. Amen, and blessed be.
When you hear Morton Lordson, the word that comes to mind is grace. I first encountered Morton Lordson many years ago. It was on a late afternoon. I was serving congregation in Clearwater, Florida. I was driving home after a particularly difficult day. I don't know what it was. It was a bad day. And as I was driving, I started hearing Morton Lordson's version of Rainer Maria Rilke's poem, Die Redon, on the radio. And something washed over me. I just felt held by this deep, amazing grace that I just had to pull over, stop, and listen, and be held. Thank you. Thank you. Speaking of Rilke, in the late autumn of 1902, a 19-year-old aspiring poet by the name of Franz Xaver Capus wrote to Rainer Maria Rilke for an opinion on his poetry. Now, Rilke, who was 27 at that time, was already a world-famous poet and had received many such requests from people, but a certain sense of kinship and resonance with Franz compelled Rilke to write back to him, and they continued corresponding over a period of 6 years, which are collected in this gem of a book, Letters to a Young Poet. The letters turned out to be more like epistles, offering some of the most profound and penetrating words ever written, not only about poetry, but about the whole creative process. It was as if Rilke was writing letters to himself, clarifying his passion. So here's an excerpt from one of his letters.
The thought of being a creator, of engendering, of shaping is nothing without its continuous great confirmation and embodiment in the world. Nothing without the thousand-fold ascent from things and animals. And our enjoyment of it is so indescribably beautiful and rich, only because it is inherited memories of the engendering and birthing of millions.
In one creative thought, 1,000 forgotten nights of love come to life again and fill it with majesty and exaltation. And those who come together in the nights in our entwined and rocking delight perform a solemn task and gather sweetness, depth, and strength for the song of some future poet who will appear in order to say ecstasies that are unsayable.
And they call forth the future, and even if they have made a mistake and embrace blindly, the future comes anyway. A new human being arises, and on the foundation of the accident that seems to be accomplished here, there awakens the law by which a strong, determined seed forces its way through to the egg cell that openly advances to meet it. Don't be confused by surfaces. In the depths of everything becomes law.
And those who live the mystery falsely and badly, and there are many, lose it only for themselves and nevertheless pass it on like a sealed letter without knowing it.
You did it again. This was not an easy piece for the choir to be working on, from what I have heard, both before today as well as between our services today. So I thank our choir, Henry, Chris, and Jasmine, for this beautiful work that to me captures the wild, creative spirit of Walt Whitman's poetry. And the fact that Dr. Arden, in trying to find the music that fit well with those words, kind of kept that wildness fresh in a way that I know, as I remarked earlier, that some of your spirits felt a bit unhinged as opposed to uncaged. We thank you for sharing that creative energy and joy this morning. Thank you. So, that's our theme for this month. May is creativity, which is our Soul Matters theme that we not only explore in the context of worship, but come together in our small group ministry to engage with this theme. Now, when we plan these things, we sit with these themes almost 9 months ahead of schedule. So, and when we reviewed these themes last June, it looked fine. You know, creativity, sure, why not? Except, I don't think we paid attention to the time of the year, which by the time it is May, while there may be new life and spring all around, the weather is gorgeous and you're all feeling pretty joyous, when it comes to ministry, it's a different story, because our spirits are flagging at this time. We kind of see the end of the church year right around the corner, and we're kind of slogging our way through as we continue to toil in the day-to-day vineyards of congregational ministry, working with budgets and looking at next year and dealing with staff transitions, you name it. Also, this is the time when ministers on Sunday afternoons, with some libation in hand, may sometimes, strong spirit, I'm saying, the spirit, tend to look at wanted ads, trying to consider doing something else, completely different, even go into real estate, for example, which I have contemplated, friends. So anyway, I digress. So it is a bit hard to kind of get our spirit going. So it was particularly helpful when Henry came up with this amazing array of music to not only just drive home the point of creativity and how joy is a part of creativity, but also to really lift our spirits as we went about planning this service. So Henry, thank you. Thank you for rising to the occasion, even though resurrection is over. I appreciate it. You're pulling another Easter miracle. So, comrade, as we dialogue this morning for a few minutes, I recognize that part of creativity is connecting with that bundle of emotional, spiritual, mental processes that combine to give rise to new thoughts, new ideas, new visions, new combinations, new ways of relating and being together. To me, which is what the creative impulse is all about, of being a full part of creation, being present, being fully alive in the moment, as if this is our very last moment. So the thing I wonder about is, how do we return to that natural state of being, which is what I feel we are all created into, that we get away from? How do we access the creative essence at the heart of who we are? Because we live in this 21st century in lots of ways alienated from our essential selves, where we have gotten away, forgotten our interconnectedness. We have moved away from being more holistic, more grounded in how we live our lives. In many ways, what Thoreau said 100 years ago, actually more than 100 years ago, that we sleepwalk our way through life. It feels that way. That the culture, the society, the time we live in puts us in places where we are completely disconnected from our creative, essential selves, that unless we force ourselves to do it, we somehow cannot do it. Because society doesn't seem to invite us to be creative. When I think of how our spirit is stifled, even killed, by all that we experience, I'm reminded of one example, which is standardized testing in schools.
Yeah.
There is no surefire way of killing the creative spirit in our children than standardized testing. Have you experienced that here in Montgomery County? Because I have. And it is a soul-sucking way of ensuring that our children grow up to conform rather than be connected to the holy curiosity that is so much a part of who they are. All this to say, how do we engage with the challenge of connecting with our essential creative selves and making that a daily practice, making it an internal process. You have some thoughts on that?
I think Andy Dooley, speaker, a Science of Mind speaker, often says, the first step is admitting that you have a serious problem. And I think that problem of seriousness is a block sometimes to our creativity. We get in our daily, day-to-day, and forget that we're creative beings. And even in our everyday moments, we are still creating. It's not just these bursts of what we call creativity, but even in the morning, my alarm goes off, I jolt out of bed, and in that moment, I can create anxiety about what's going to come in my day, or I can move into a space of creativity and wonder, of curiosity, and wondering how I might engage with my day as a creator myself, also creating and being created by all with whom I come in contact with. Rilke says, "Nobody can counsel and help you, nobody. There's only one single way. Go into yourself, search for the reason that bids you right. Find out whether it is spreading its roots in the deepest places of your heart. Acknowledge to yourself whether you would have to die if it were denied you to write. This, above all else, ask yourself in the stillest hour of the night, must I write?"
In the stillest hour of the night, must I write? Or must I be creative? I think he is posing an elemental challenge to us. But the thing I wonder about, Katie, is in terms of the creative process, we seem to be somewhat stuck in expecting an outcome, in wanting the creative process to lead to a creative expression, a creative product, a poem, a beautiful piece of music, a brilliant sermon.
So here's the sermon writing process that many ministers report. Monday comes. Things are spread out on the floor around you. You begin to write, going, "This is crap, crap, crap. This is junk. This is garbage. This is terrible." Sometimes the creative process in search of this false idea of perfect can take us to a stopping point when it is the process, the formative process of being with the topic, being with the pieces of literature that gives rise to what is meant to come into being. And you might have found this out, maybe it's just me, but I don't think so, that sometimes I'll deliver a sermon that is something that I'm just wondering why I'm even saying the things and why it's come together the way it has, and someone will say, "You were talking right to me." When I release that idea of the final product and just listen to what's seeking to emerge, what is seeking to be creative, it lands in the places that it's meant to land. But
it does.
Got to get my ego out of the way.
That's right. So it's interesting. You say you have that process start on Monday. That's great. You're way ahead. My beloved colleague Ken McLean will attest to this. For some of us, that doesn't happen till Friday or even Saturday, if we're lucky. Right, Ken? Yep. So, having said that, the point I want to make is the creative expression is wonderful, and there are many manifestations. We experienced such beautiful music this morning, which is a great outcome of the creativity of the human spirit. The beautiful flowers that Christian Graham created. Yes. Those are wonderful expressions of the creative spirit. But does it always have to have an outcome? Isn't the process, the struggle in itself, part of being creative? And why can't we sometimes be content with that than force ourselves to get to an outcome? Now, I say this not because I want you to be okay with a crappy reflection on Sunday morning and just say, hey, I went through the struggle, so please be appreciative of that. No, I'm not saying that. Just to say that it is both and. And being totally wedded to an outcome sometimes defeats the whole purpose of going through the process. And it also sometimes takes away the cathartic aspect of being creative, which is what Rilke says. It depicts your sorrows and desires, passing thoughts, and the belief in some sort of beauty. Describe all these with loving, quiet, humble sincerity, and use to express yourself the things in your environment, the images from your dreams, and the objects of your memory.
So I can't help but think of a meeting that I was at earlier this week, and after check-in, it was evident that there were some common threads. Like, it was a horrible week. It was a horrible week, and it was evident in the set of everyone's shoulders. It was evident in the strain in our voices, and some things just call for a primal scream. That is what was seeking to emerge. And so in that moment, we sought to use our bodies, and we made some noise. And then we used our voices and let sound come from our bodies and created a different kind of music together. There was something that was seeking to emerge, and because it wasn't released until that moment, it was alive in conflicting emotions that were wishing to be named and called forth. It was seeking to come from the muscles and bones and be heard. And it was amazing how after we moved through that time together of creating something just for us, we were free.
So what I'm hearing you talk about is how the creative process is messy.
Oh, yes.
Is imperfect. It sometimes is about releasing rather than holding tight.
Right.
It is not being caught up in needing to have it be the embodiment of perfectionism.
We weren't worried about if we were at an A sharp or a C flat. It was just allowing sound to come forth.
Because perfectionism does get in the way of the creative spirit. The author Anne Lamott, in her book Bird by Bird, had this to say: perfectionism is the voice of the oppressor, the enemy of the people. It will keep you cramped and insane your whole life, and it is the main obstacle between you and a shitty first draft. She said it. Perfectionism is a mean, frozen form of idealism which messes the artist's true friend. What people somehow inadvertently, I am sure, forgot to mention when we were children was that we need to make messes in order to find out who we are and why we are here, and by extension, what we are supposed to be writing, or to say, to be creating. And to me, that's what a religious community is all about.
Yes.
It is a messy way of being together, learning how to be human together.
Yes.
Because we can't be human in isolation. We can only be human through relationships, bringing our whole broken, fragile, yet glorious selves into community and learning how to be in relationship together.
We grow together. We bounce off of each other. Learn to be more fully ourselves through how we interact with each other and the world around us. This is a great container of learning, a great messy container of imperfection and love expressing in so many wonderful and glorious forms.
So how does your UU faith support you in doing that?
I think it is my Universalist faith that holds me, that reminds me that even in my imperfection, I am still saved, and that the inherent goodness of all humanity will ultimately come forth. So even when I'm not perfect, even when I'm hurting, that saving grace is still there for me and is inherent in me and inherent with beloveds that are around me. Even when I'm cut off in traffic, I call on that Universalist piece of myself to remember that we save each other. You know, we have a choice. I mean, this is DC traffic, right? You ever been cut off in DC traffic? There's times, right? But how you react after that moment changes the connections, changes other people around you and their relationship to you. I think sometimes those are the little ways in which I get to help connect with others and where we save each other by holding that space, by creating love in an environment that might otherwise be tense.
It's interesting you lift up the Universalist spirit, not that the Unitarian spirit is lagging, even though it does need some thawing at times.
Yeah.
The Universalist spirit is what guided us to create our first principle. When we say we affirm and promote the inherent worth and dignity of every person, no exceptions, we are paying our respect to the Universalist heritage of that eternal love that will not let us go, let us down, or let us off the hook.
That's right.
But if we're going to embody that spirit, it calls us to look at being creative as soul work. That is both nourishing and challenging, that is both a joy and a struggle at times. And how we do that work is what a religious community is called to figure out and to embody that, however imperfectly, in how we go about this process. Now, one of the things that is, to me, an imperative for doing that work is embodying the spirit of diversity.
Yes.
Not just celebrate diversity as the cliche goes, but actually engage with diversity, where our commitments are actually tested and refined and deepened, where we come together not to find agreement, but to seek deeper understanding.
That means having conversations, Abhi.
Like this?
Like this.
Okay.
Something beyond the weather. Something beyond the surface, I'm fine. Into, hey, this is what's really happening in my life and it hurts and I don't know what to do.
You remind me of what Parker Palmer, the educator and Quaker philosopher, once said, that true community is created not by people being warm and fuzzy together all the time. Yeah. But true community is created when people learn to face their spiritual discomfort together, and together learn to journey to deeper places of belonging. To me, that's the essence of what a Unitarian Universalist religious community is all about.
And I would add, it's more about being together and being in the relationship than being right.
So, I think we have rambled on for a bit.
So.
And together we have blown away once again the 12 o'clock absolute deadline. I'm sure we have a special place reserved in UU hell.
Probably.
That I'm sure some of our members are now relegating us to.
There's cable there.
Yep.
That's good.
And I'm a repeat offender. You see, I was sharing with someone earlier that this is what you get when you called an Indian guy coming from a culture where we tend to have a whole different conception of time. The yuga concept, which goes into thousands and thousands of years. So what's an hour in the way in which we live, move, and have our being? But it is my hope, friends, as we bring this point to a close, that we can be a religious community where our imperfect creative spirits can find a home. And it is my hope that this religious community can be a place where everyone can bring their whole selves, where we can touch the deep spirit of creativity that lives in each of us and in the universe, and finds not just a home here, but flourishes here. So what we create in our individual lives matters, and what we co-create here matters. So may we be blessed with an abundance of creativity and use it to make this, our spiritual home, and this world a little more beautiful, a little more exciting, a little more whole, and a little bit more unsettling. I wish you divine discontent and spiritual maladjustment. So may it be.
Amen.
And from this profound conversation, I have to say that it was profound to me, we move to the profane, so to speak, which is conversations about giving. We're in the midst of our annual and capital campaign. In case you have not paid attention, I just want to let you know that we've been trying to do this since early March. And part of it is to support our annual budget, which is what we're doing. Actually, I spent quite a bit of my weekend trying to develop a budget. And while some of it I found to be creatively challenging, the rest of it I found to be somewhat soul-sucking. In part because trying to figure out with my limited imagination how best can we live into our vision as a beloved community, and not being able to find that within the limited means that I saw us having to deal with. You see, the numbers are quite clear. We have a budget of around $1.3 million. About 75% of that is fulfilled through your financial commitment, which then allows us to be able to provide a ministry of depth and meaning and creativity, including this glorious music ministry that we experience today. But when people choose not to participate, as I said last week, we don't have your support. And it does stifle the spirit, the creative spirit at times. Now, I learned after doing some math that it takes on average about $3,860 per day to keep this place going. And the median household income, I found out in Montgomery County, is around $97,000 a year. Wow. 4% of that is $3,880. Now, in an ideal world, if every member had the average income or the median income in Montgomery County and had enough disposable income to pledge 4%, we would be all set, and I wouldn't be haranguing you at this time of the service with all this. We would not have any financial issues. In fact, we would have a major surplus that we won't have to do any other kinds of fundraisers. But the reality is, many of us make below the median, and others make way more than that. Some cannot give 4%, others give way more than that. And that's what makes us a religious community. And that's what we seek. That we're not seeking an affluent religious community, we are seeking a religious, a beloved religious community. And we can all give something because it is within our means. It will cost us something. But I think the benefits of generosity far outweigh the costs. So far, 27% of Cedar Lane families who have been visited have committed 56% of our annual goal towards $935,000. That is amazing. 27% have given to 56% of our goal. And 17% of Cedar Lane families have helped us raise close to $3 million towards our capital campaign. That is incredible generosity, folks. But just imagine for a moment what it would be like if we reached actually 100% of all of our Cedar Lane families. What would that look like? Where would that lead us to be? So as you ponder that, I want to take a moment to thank some amazing people who've been doing this ministry because they feel called to it. The ministry of being visiting stewards. So if you are one of them and you are present, would you please rise so we can see you, recognize you, and thank you. So when these folks call you to make a visit, please say yes. And if you've been visited and you're still pondering, please consider making a commitment. Thank you. And now I invite the ushers to come forward to give and receive an offering to sustain our ministry and the ministry of Housing Unlimited.
I invite you to just close your eyes for a moment and listen to the amazing drum beat. Just go ahead and move your body a little bit. Yeah. I invite you to take this beat, the freedom to move when your heartbeat calls you to, into your day, your week, your month, and beyond. Go forth, creative beings. Go forth and create as you are also being created. Amen, and blessed be.
Lots of joy here. River Road needs to know. Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. Hide it under a bushel? No. I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. One more time, oh man, we say. Sing it louder. Let me hear you. Building up a word.